Good afternoon. It is Tuesday, the 14th of September, 2010. My name is Jim Mayola, and we are in the Express Studio at the Community Media Center, and it is my pleasure to be interviewing my good friend, Patti Hull. Hi, Patti.
Hi, Jim.
How are you today?
I am great.
Yeah, you just got off from a long day at work, didn't you, at McDaniel College?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Well, you're going to tell me a little bit about yourself. First of all, where and when were you born?
I was born on Row Road in New Windsor in 1955.
Okay, so you're just a baby.
Yeah.
Okay. So did you grow up in New Windsor?
I didn't. My family has actually lived in a lot of different parts of Carroll County, but I mostly grew up in the Manchester area.
Did you? Okay. And so your earliest recollections then were probably in Manchester?
Manchester, Melrose, Deep Run, around that area.
Okay. Where did you go to grade school?
I went to grade school at Manchester Elementary.
Okay. And did you stay there all through grade school?
I did.
So you had the same group of students that were your friends from first grade all the way through, weren't they?
I did.
Do you still stay in touch with any of them? Do you ever run across some of them?
I do.
Isn't that wonderful?
It is wonderful.
It really is, yes. And that's something about this kind of a community that we live in, that we can maintain relationships with people over many years. And it's a nice thing. Yeah.
It is a nice thing.
Yeah. As a little girl, what did you do? What kind of games did you play?
Well, I remember going outside at recess. We had a wonderful time. Sometimes we would play dodgeball. Sometimes we would play jump rope, softball, all kinds of things.
Yeah.
Get on the equipment outside of the school.
Sure.
Lots of games. And as a kid at home, we played things like Spud, Mother May I, Freeze Tag.
Yeah.
Fun.
I just learned what Spud was the other day. I never knew what that was, and I just learned what that was. What a fun game.
That is a fun game.
Yeah. Now, what kind of work did your parents do?
My dad was a long-distance mover. My mom was mostly a homemaker. She had some part-time jobs here and there, but she was always in the kitchen making the most wonderful soup, bread, whatever. Whenever we came home from school, it was just the most wonderful feeling because there was my mom.
Yeah. And great smells in the kitchen. Now, your dad was basically the breadwinner then, and he supported how large of a family?
I have 5 siblings, so there were 6 kids, my mom and dad.
Isn't that amazing?
I love having a big family.
Yeah, and what a great lifestyle where you can have one wage earner primarily that basically can support a large family like that. That's a fairly good sized family. Did you have a garden at home?
We did. We almost always had a garden, and my mom did a lot of canning. And one of my fondest memories is going in the garden with a salt shaker, my next older brother and I, and picking tomatoes and just standing there and sprinkling some salt on them and eating them.
Still warm from the sun.
It doesn't get any better than that.
What a great flavor, yeah. Fantastic. So, but you learned a lot of things that way. You learned the value of putting things up to keep them so that you didn't have to buy them, and how important it was to save. And probably to share, because you probably shared with your neighbors, didn't you? Yeah.
My mom was extremely frugal. She knew how to take a soup bone and make 3 different dishes out of it, and just an incredible homemaker and really a frugal person. So yeah, I learned a lot from her and a lot about hard work from both my mom and dad.
Yeah, got a good work ethic. Yeah. What kind of chores did you have around the house?
My specific chore was cleaning the bathroom because for some strange reason I like to clean the bathroom. So my mom said, okay, you can clean the bathroom.
Well, it's a confined space. And that made it a little bit easier. It's a lot easier than maybe cutting the grass or something like that.
Well, I actually did that as I got older. Sometimes I would cut the grass with our push mower. We never had a riding mower. But that wasn't bad. And I took care of my room and whatever else my mom might have asked me to do.
Where were you in the range of your siblings? Were you in the middle or at the end?
I was number 5, and I was the baby for 6 years until my little brother came along and displaced me.
Oh, boy, I bet that was a traumatic experience.
Yes, it was, but I grew to love him.
I'm sure you did. So you became his babysitter, I guess. You kind of looked after your little brother?
Mostly my older sister did that. She was more the babysitter than I was.
But it's nice to be a big sister, isn't it?
Yeah,
that's pretty cool. Yeah. So, Patti, after grade school, how about middle school?
We had junior high then, and I
Mhm.
went to North Carroll Junior High
Mhm.
School for 2 years, and then to North Carroll High School for 4 years.
Now, is it the school that's North Carroll High School today, or is it the old school?
No, it's the old school.
Okay.
That's now the middle school. That was
Right.
both the junior high and the high school at the
Mhm.
time.
How'd you like the transition from elementary to high school? Was that hard for you?
It was hard. I
Yeah.
loved elementary school.
Yeah.
I really did.
Yeah. I'm the same way, and I think
Yeah.
I've talked to a lot of people that say that they were very comfortable with the grades 1 through 6.
Mhm.
But then when you got to the higher levels, middle school and high school, it got a little unwieldy. It's a little tougher.
It did. It's
Yeah.
it's just harder because you're growing up and you're trying to figure out who you are and
Right.
where you fit in
Yeah.
and that kind of thing.
What did you want to be when you grew up?
I wanted to be a phys ed teacher.
Did
And
you?
when I first went to college, I was a phys ed major.
Mhm.
I had an advisor who told me there were no jobs for phys ed teachers, so
Oh.
I gave up my dream. But people
Oh.
who graduated after me came out and got jobs, so
Did they? Aw.
that was kind of sad.
Yeah.
But I'm okay with it now.
So what did you decide
What-
to do?
I got my degree, my first degree in history.
Okay.
But then I got married
Mhm.
before I graduated from college and was a homemaker. I stayed
Mhm.
home and raised my kids before going back to work.
Mm-hmm. Where'd you go to college?
I went to Towson University
Mhm.
for my first bachelor's, and then my second bachelor's to McDaniel College, and that bachelor's is in music.
Mhm. And talking about music, when did you get started in music?
I actually was the pianist at my church when I was 16 years old.
No kidding.
So I've been either a church pianist or church organist for about almost 40 years now.
When were you first introduced to the piano?
I started taking piano lessons when I was in 5th grade.
Mhm.
My dad's mom was an organist at St. Benedict's Church in Baltimore,
Okay.
and my dad had a beautiful tenor voice, and he used to go around. I'm really getting off the topic here, but he used to
No,
go around
it's
the house
fine.
singing, "When the moon shines over the cowshed, I'll be waiting for you, Katie, at the kitty kitchen door." But he had this.
I know the song.
You know
yeah,
that song?
Sure.
He had this beautiful tenor voice, and I grew up. Both of my parents loved music, and I grew up listening to recordings of Broadway musicals. And my
Mhm.
dad liked opera and
Mhm.
all kinds of beautiful music. So he wanted his children to play musical instruments, and
Mhm.
so when I was in 5th grade, that Christmas we got a piano,
Oh, wonderful.
and so I started taking piano lessons.
So you're about 10 years old, you started taking lessons, and you've
Mhm.
never stopped.
No, because I just recently finished my degree up at McDaniel in
Yeah.
music, my second bachelor's.
Yes,
Yeah.
Congratulations.
So, yeah, thank you.
And you are a pianist now
Hmm.
at
At the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in
Mhm.
Westminster.
Wonderful. And you're the secretary for the music department at McDaniel.
I am.
Yeah. Now, how
Mhm.
long have you worked at McDaniel?
I have been at McDaniel 10 years now.
It's a great institution, isn't it?
It is. There are some of the nicest people work at the college. It's a really good place to be, and really wonderful students, and I love
Mhm.
the music students.
Oh, yes.
They're great kids.
It really is good.
Mhm.
Wonderful. So, when you first got out of college, what did you do?
When I first got out of college, I got a job working for Commercial Credit,
Mm-hmm.
and then I found out that I was expecting my first baby,
Mhm.
and shortly before she was born, I quit work and
Mhm.
stayed home with my kids. But I was always a church musician all
Mhm.
the time. I just didn't have a 9-to-5 job like
Right.
during the week.
Yeah. And you've raised a family. How
Mhm.
large is your family?
We have 3 children,
Okay.
a daughter and 2 sons,
Mhm.
and they're all grown.
It's wonderful. You've done well.
Hmm.
So, what stories do you want to tell me, Patti? We've talked about you a little bit. Tell me, tell me some other things about your family or about your experiences. Is there anything you can think of?
Well, Carroll County has been a wonderful place
Mhm.
to grow up. Seen a lot of changes.
Mm-hmm.
Having lived here all my life, my husband grew up on a dairy farm, and
Okay.
often we talk about how you could drive down 140 on a Friday night when we were growing up and almost not see another vehicle
Right.
because There was no shopping center, and there were not a lot of places to eat. Carroll County was still very, very rural
now,
at the time.
What time period are we talking about then when you were driving?
Even when we were teenagers.
Teenagers, okay.
So we're talking about the 70s.
Late 60s, early 70s.
Late 60s to the 70s, yeah. And so Carroll County has grown a lot. It's changed a lot, and we both like it a little more rural. We both like the country and that kind of thing. But we've seen a lot of really good people come into the county, and a lot of nice things happen.
You mentioned that your husband grew up on a dairy farm. Was that in Carroll County?
Yes.
Okay.
Both of his parents grew up on farms, and we now live on the farm that his mom grew up on. She was born there, and two of our children were actually born at the farm. They were born at home. The third one was born in a hospital.
Wonderful, yeah.
And my dad's farm, my husband's father's farm was on Sullivan Road, and David's brother now lives on that farm, but they raised Guernsey cows.
So you've kept both of the farms in your family. How wonderful. That's just remarkable. Now, growing up on a farm, on a dairy farm, I imagine that your husband had a lot of chores.
He did have a lot of chores, and he did not enjoy milking cows. His brother, I think, enjoyed milking cows a lot more than he did. But my husband enjoyed the field work, and he likes to tell lots of stories about how when he was like 4 years old, his dad had him out on the tractor.
Wow.
So they start pretty early and work pretty hard.
I need to get him in here to tell me his story.
Yeah.
That would be real interesting, yeah.
You should get his brother in here.
Sure, that would be great.
Yeah.
But you know what's interesting, Patti? People don't understand, the new people coming up today don't understand that kind of responsibility that you had on a dairy farm. You had no time for vacations because you had to be there every day, 365 days a year, to milk those cows twice a day, morning and evening. And their days started way before the sun came up.
I believe his father got up about 4 o'clock every morning and went out and tended the cows and milked the cows before he came in and had his own breakfast.
Sure, I'm sure he did.
And yeah, you're right, they have to be milked twice a day. There's
no ifs, ands, or buts. You don't go for a weekend in Florida. The cows would die.
Right.
Yeah, it's just awful. Yeah. So it's a great responsibility.
It is a great responsibility, yeah.
So you've seen a lot of changes in the community. What do you think are the most profound changes that you've seen, Patti?
Oh, goodness. That one sort of catches me off guard. I would have to think about that maybe a little bit more in depth. But immediately the thing that comes to mind is just that there are a lot more businesses in Carroll County because as the population has grown, there are a lot more schools now, a lot more of everything that people need, and as the population grows, you have to have. So I would say just the population growth in Carroll County more than anything, and sort of the switch away from a rural society. And it seems like a lot of people who live in the county now work outside of the county. I would say probably that's the greatest change that I've seen.
Yeah, we don't have as much industry as we used to have in the county.
Oh, that's definitely
So people
true.
have to go outside to start to find employment. What kinds of things did you do, maybe as a family, but for entertainment, as a youngster or as a teenager?
I love this question because we did a lot of really fun stuff. With 6 kids and my dad working, not my mom being a homemaker, we didn't have a lot of money, but we did the most awesome stuff because my parents both loved history, and they instilled in all 6 of their children a love for history. So we traveled up and down the eastern seaboard visiting a lot of historical places,
No kidding.
particularly Civil War battlefields. I don't know why we had just such an interest in that, because we have family members who fought on both sides. We have found in going back and doing our genealogy.
Wonderful.
But anyway, so I have really, really fond memories of that. And something that is cool that I wish kids today could enjoy, that families could enjoy, is the drive-in movie, because our whole family, my mom would fry chicken and we would all hop in our 57 Ford and go to a drive-in movie. And they were really nice, fun family movies. And you could sit outside on the hood of the car or whatever, watch the movie, and you could hear it. And
sure. And it was almost a community social event because there were families around you in their cars and probably people you knew right there in the movie theater that you'd chat with.
Well, I think, I'm not sure, I can't remember. I think we went to the Monocacy. I think it was called the Monocacy.
Right.
I'm not sure where that was located because I was
That's
younger when we went there.
Going out of Tawnytown.
Okay.
It's heading out of Tawnytown towards Thurmont is the Monocacy, yeah.
And I remember there would be lots of kids there.
Yeah.
I mean, they had little play areas for the kids and stuff like that. But and another memory is of our family going to a place called Munch's on 140 where you could get a hamburger and a milkshake for 25 cents. I think the hamburgers were like 15 cents.
No kidding.
Yeah, and they were really good.
Yeah. Now, talking about drive-ins, before we leave that, do you remember the Ridge Drive-In that was right here in Westminster?
You know, I remember the name, but I'm not sure we went to that one a lot. I kind of think we went to Monocacy. Right
on where 97 is now. It's where the high school is. Was the Ridge Drive-In? Yeah. Yeah. How about any other kinds of entertainment?
We spent a lot of time outside in the yard as kids. I mean, we would stay out until dark. And,
sure.
That's something else that kind of makes me sad because it seems like kids today don't have time to actually just lay out on the grass and look up at the stars and kind of dream because
and catch fireflies.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We used to do that a lot.
And be kids.
Be kids. I think that's really important.
Yeah. Sure.
Just,
love the seasons. Do whatever's happening at any given time, without any structure. Yeah.
I think it's important to have some time that's not structured.
Yeah. So, any other stories, Patti? That you can think of?
Can't think of any off the top of my head.
Okay. Let me ask you this question. Before I forget, did you, as a family, or when you were growing up, ever make it down to Westminster? Would you come down to Westminster to do shopping or anything like that? Oh,
we did. And I remember as a kid going to, I believe it was called McCrory's. It was a department store, a five and dime, I guess you call it, that was on the corner where Johansson's is now located.
Okay.
And I specifically remember Easter time. I loved it because they would put these little baby chicks in the window. They would be dyed different colors.
Sure.
And I'm sure that's not real kind to the little chicks,
right.
but that was what they did at the time. And as a little kid, that was just so exciting to see these baby chicks in the window and all the things inside the store that were set up for Easter. And I remember the movie theater that was located where the Carroll Arts Center is now. That was where my husband and I had our first date. We went to see the movie Jaws.
No kidding.
Yeah,
wow.
I'm serious, yeah.
I bet you were scared to death when you saw that movie.
Yes, I was, but that should have been a clue because my husband likes those kind of scary movies.
That's okay.
Yeah, it's okay because he's a good guy.
Yes, he is. And it's nice that we each have our own interests because it makes life interesting.
Yes, it does.
Yes. But Jaws for a first date, I'm not sure I would have picked that one. So downtown Westminster was kind of a bustling place, wasn't it?
Yeah, actually it was for the county at the time.
Yeah.
It was actually pretty fun and exciting to come to Westminster.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, McCory's, did they have a snack bar?
I don't think they did have a snack bar. I remember their candy counter because they had like rows and rows of penny candy behind glass, and it would be all stacked up. And for a little kid, that's just so exciting.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
And the thing about the little chicks, I know in the cities it's not a good thing, but I've heard stories that a lot of the people around here would take those little chicks home and put them in their hen yard with the regular chickens, and they'd be fine.
I think that's probably what most people did around here.
Yeah, they'd be all right. Most of them made it.
Yeah.
So that was a good thing.
Yeah.
Patti, I had forgotten to ask you when we were talking earlier. You came of age in the 60s, I guess, and into the 70s. You were probably a teenager right in the middle of the Vietnam War. Did you have any experiences with Vietnam here in Carroll County?
Very definitely. And my first memories of the Vietnam War thinking about the Vietnam War were when I was in junior high school. And I can remember the big thing was for all the young women in particular, we got these MIA bracelets that represented an American soldier who was missing in action in Vietnam. And so I can remember my friends and I getting these MIA bracelets. But also, the Vietnam War touched my family directly because I have two brothers who were in the military. Well, actually, my dad and three of my brothers all served in the military, but two who specifically were in Vietnam. And the first, my oldest brother, was in the Army, and he actually did 2 tours of duty in Vietnam. And I can remember just praying for him to come home safely.
Sure. Yeah.
And then on top of that, my mom sent 2 sons to Vietnam because my next brother down, excuse me, was in the Marines. And so at one point in time, I believe that their tours of duty may have overlapped a little. I can't exactly remember, but I'm not sure how my mom, she was an incredible woman because she managed to hold it all together to send 2 sons to Vietnam. But I can remember all the images on TV. If you would turn the TV on every night.
Oh, I remember. Yes. It was horrifying.
It was horrifying because you would see all these pictures of wounded American soldiers being taken off the battlefield. And I can remember the growing unpopularity within the United States among all the people over this war and the anti-war feelings. And I remember the pictures on TV of young men burning their draft cards and burning the American flag and things like that. My family was very patriotic and very strong support of the military. And also, something else that really touched me directly was we had, I think, 3 young men from our high school who were killed in Vietnam. And I remember as a senior, we erected a monument to them at the high school in honor of them. And that was pretty touching, pretty special for the people.
They were in the prime of their lives.
Yeah.
And they were snuffed out. They were taken away from us. Your brothers made it back okay.
My brothers made it back okay.
Thank goodness.
Yeah.
Lots of prayers.
Lots of prayers. And they never really talked about it very much. I think my oldest brother in the last few years has maybe said a little more about it, but not much at all.
It was tough.
Yeah.
It was pretty horrendous.
And I remember some young men from Carroll County who, one in particular who was taken as a prisoner of war, and I remember hearing his story later.
Yeah, brutal. Let me ask you something else, Patti. You and I are about the same age, and you probably have some memories about this. Any experiences with integration? I know when you were a little girl in grade school, we probably had segregated schools, didn't we? You were in an all-white school?
Well, all the way through high school, it was an all-white, our elementary, our junior high, our high school. It wasn't until I think a couple of years after I graduated that we began to see a change in that, and there were a few other people other than just white people in our school.
And the changes came very gradually.
They came very gradually. Yeah.
So you had no personal experience with that during school.
I had no personal experience with it until I went to Towson University, and of course that's and it was fully integrated at the time. And it's funny you should bring that up because one of the things that I was thinking about that I think has changed in Carroll County is that as the county has grown, I think, and maybe it's just is a reflection of the changing of times too. I think there's less prejudice. There's much more acceptance of each other for who we are and where we came from.
I think so. I have to say that I'm the product of the same kind of generation as you are. And it was difficult for our country to make the adjustment, but I think we've done it. And look at McDaniel. It's quite cosmopolitan.
It is.
And the children today have no other experiences other than always being in classes with people of other cultures. So I think we've probably gone a big ways toward a complete transition. I'm sure there would be people that would disagree with that, but I think at least we're moving in the right direction, personally.
Personally, I agree with you, yeah. I definitely think we're moving in the right direction.
Patti, let me ask you this question. I always like to end my interviews with something that's kind of interesting, a little thought-provoking. You get to work with a lot of college students. You get to work with a lot of students who have figured out what they think they want to be when they grow up, and they're working towards getting a degree, and they're working towards getting ready to start a career and maybe start their families. You've done that. You've had a career for a while. You've had a family. I'm sure you've made some mistakes. I'm sure you've had some great successes. But if you were going to offer some advice to a young person that was just getting ready to start off today, knowing all the things you know and recognizing what kind of interesting economic times we're having right now, what advice would you give to some young person?
Well, I have always been a strong advocate for education. My parents both were determined that their children would be able to go as far as they could with their education, because my mother's father died when she was 12, and she had to go live and work on her uncle's dairy farm. So she had to leave school.
Sure.
And it was just heartbreaking for her. Now, she was able to go back later and get her GED. And then my dad also, he was one of 13 children, and growing up during the Depression, he actually had to leave school too to help support his family. So neither one of them were able to finish their education at the time, and they were determined that their children would receive an education. And so I believe firmly that young people should get all the education they can and prepare to have good and successful careers, but go with what you love in your heart. Don't go with what will help you to make the most money, because if you're not happy, it doesn't matter how much money you make, that's not going to bring you happiness. And I also I firmly believe that family comes first. I don't know of anyone who on their deathbed would say, I wish I had spent more time at my job. Most regrets are about something that people wish they had done for or with a loved one. And my favorite, I teach a class of young women at church, and one of my favorite sayings to them is, the hand that rocks the cradle rules the world, because I want to teach them that the most important thing in the world is family.
Absolutely.
And friends.
What great advice, Patti. That was just wonderful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you'd like to share? Anything else you can think of?
You know, in regard to the last thing that I said, I had written down a quote that I have always kind of had in my mind that I love, and it says, no other success can compensate for failure in the home.
Oh, my. Very interesting.
Yeah. And I totally believe that, because, you know, if you don't have somebody to go home to that you love, and somebody who loves you, and your life is much harder. It's much more difficult. Yeah. And so to young people, I would really say make sure that you put your best into your home. Let that come before your job and anything else in the world.
Sure. Very good advice. Patti, it has been such a pleasure talking to you today. Thank you so much.
It's always a pleasure to talk to you, Jim.
Oh, I really enjoyed it, and I'm sure that other people will enjoy listening to it and watching your video. Thank you again. Have a great day.